Biology, human biology, medicine, pathology, all of the parts of the cells. Where does it all begin? It all comes from a chemical reaction of motor and ionic biomolecules. These are complexes that form called polymers. And these compounds, or polymers, basically start systematically based on a law of chemistry and a reaction rate. They form various compounds or polymers, and they become very systematic. And if you limit what those polymers and molecules and atoms are in the system, then you always have no, you won't always have, but you will have a systematic process that renders certain results, which is why human life lives and dies and heals and regenerates. This is because the system of those polymers and molecules and atoms and energy, based on what they do, they form chains, and eventually somehow they change. So change, we can say, if it isn't scientific, if it's natural, change usually ends up being bad. So nature itself is actually deadly. There's lots of changes in nature that don't work with human life. So basically, the system starts out with a cell when you're a human being. It has organelles, and they're made up of various chemicals known as biomolecules. Okay? And those biomolecules start with amino acids, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids. And then you got your vitamins and minerals, hormones, neurotransmitters, peptides, complex mixtures that turn into compounds and polymers. And you got your basic chemistry like water, air, salt, stuff like that, chlorine. And then you got your basic atoms that are consistently found in the human composition, like phosphorus. They're in your mineral table. And then, those react and they produce products. The cells actually do have an ionic status where they can actually cause real chemical reactions. However, a lot of the cell can also be low indigestion there. A lot of the cell can be negative or neutral, and then other parts are ionic, and they have motor effects. So, we know that biology is a systematic process, and we know what the systematic process results are when we study physiology and pathology, genetics, cytology, histology, and the test of medical functionality. Uh, and then, there's, you know, biochemistry is the source of all of this. And how we measure that is in a lab with spectrometers of different kinds. And also, we measure it with microscopes of different kinds and various equipment and chemical reactions and processes. And all of that shows us the evidence for what is clearly depicted as a human process. There's different fundamentals for that. However, I don't think the science of physiology, anatomy is pretty righteous, but physiology, I don't think that's a complete science. We know that there are things that make us tick. So what is it that makes us tick, makes us operate, puts us into motion, keeps us going for however long? It's these motor molecules and ions and, these loops, these feedback loops. Basically, it all comes down to putting molecules into reactions and chain reactions. If they don't react, then they're not going to do anything. So they have to react. Whether it's a negative reaction or a positive reaction, whether it be negative energy or positive energy, or whether it's semi-negative or positive. And it may be involved in heat and light and magnetism and the whole theory, the whole physical shebang. Our basis for what makes us human, according to common knowledge and medicine and science, is that we have a proteome. And majorly they think that proteins are what keeps our whole system functioning in our organelles and all of our cytoskeleton, and what builds these motor molecules is the protein itself. So it starts out with a motor molecule that has an ionic status in a low temperature. It actually is a really soft reaction. It's basically, it starts out with acids and bases. So when you add acids and bases and even neutrals that have motor effects even when they're neutral, they can change based on low grade temperatures. So what we call low grade temperature is a misconception, because 98.6 degrees is actually warmer in the chemical world, in the biochemical world, it's warmer than freezing. So it actually induces these special biomolecules that interact at low grade temperatures. It induces a chain reaction and it starts building things. And we think this is mostly, in our human physiology, mostly based on proteins. They think that there is a large combination of different proteins that we can have, anywhere from 10,000 to billions, that we can have in the human species, the human phylum. So basically, these proteins interact with all the other biomolecules, lipids, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. They start to form what we call polymerases, and they start systematically operating based on the origin of cells and the changes they go thereafter. So, like, we're susceptible to change. And that's one of the reasons we die, live, heal, whatever. So change can be very bad. You might not want to change a lot of things. However, change is very necessary when it's time for us to die. So what that means is that this proteinous system that builds these complexes has to change the protein system. Because we've changed our protein system naturally, what happens is that our proteins and our compounds and our organelles, they're no longer functioning correctly. Our nucleus, our mitochondria, our DNA, our ribosomes, our lysomes, our centrioles, our Golgi apparatus, our smooth endoplasmic reticulum and rough endoplasmic reticulum, all of the polymerases that are complex proteins that that replicate cells in the event of mitosis. Mitosis is important for healing and the continuation of life, and it's related to meiosis, which is the conception of a child. So the biochemical effects of that is very systematic, and it can be prone to errors, especially genetic errors or just fundamental bad chemistry. So we're finding out today that a lot of people struggle with chemistry or genetic disorders or some type of protein disorder or toxins or deprivation, not having enough vitamins, minerals, missing something in their diet. You know, all of these systems work together, and basically, along with like infections and cancers and mutations, mutation is serious. When anything becomes deformed about these proteins or these other complexes, or a vitamin or a mineral, or if anything is deformed about the actual molecular polymeric system, it starts changing things, and you get either a good function, a neutral function, or a bad function. And it can cause various illnesses, discomforts, and potentially even death or cancer, or it could be good for you. Some deformities are corrections, they're reparations, and your body does have the ability to repair itself somewhat. And we know that a lot of things in the body do heal. We have stem cells and various different kinds of cells that make up all of our tissues and our matrices, our chemical matrices. So in the end, all of these systematic things, including infection, disease, all of the phylogenetic kingdom of cellular creatures, everything is interacting in a way that nature runs a course, and science is here to correct it and keep it going. Science is the answer to life. I hypothesize that one day we'll have super energy and super atoms, and that will pretty well take care of our energy needs, and we might even be able to somehow sustain the sun and become intergalactic and do all sorts of things. Um, super energy is coming. Biology is pretty well here. They know a significant amount about it, but I don't think that there's every detail that's known about disease or healing or even genetics that we modify in order to correct our illnesses and even death. Immortality is a subject. There's two methods for immortality that I know of right now. That's in vivo stem cell therapy with genetic programming, and the Frankenstein method, where they build your organs and replace them. And basically, they would have to cut out any cancers and fill in with new cells, especially if you had brain cancer or a brain disease from a genetic mutation or your genes being switched on or off. You would develop a need for genetic programming of some type, and you would also develop a need for removal of cancers and healing of cells where they might have died. You got apoptosis that happens. There's different things that go on. Mutation is all about what this is, whether it's good or bad. So we're mutating, eventually we die. But a lot of us think that this is our home, and we want to live to see a lot longer existence. We think that life's too short, and people have messed us up because it is too short. And we want it to be longer, so we study and we learn and we work on things and we try to make life better. And in the end, that's what comes to us, is that we deserve better. All of us do. And these molecules are really important, and what we do is really important. So it's all about matrix sequencing. Basically, you're going to get some mastoid vectors, and you got to sequence it out based on measurements. You got to do 3D imaging with X-ray crystallography. You're going to use spectrometers, tunneling electron microscopes, stuff like that. You're going to be using these lab tools, and you're going to be learning how to grow tissues and build matrices, and basically form healing. We're not sure that this is all possible right now, but there are some things that are into play. There's stem cell therapy. They are growing tissues. They are growing heart valves, hearts. They are growing some of the organs. They claim to have regrown livers, implant pancreatic cells for producing insulin. Apparently, these pluripotent stem cells, which are universal to the human body, that are genetically programmed with 4 different genes switched on or off, or maybe modified, they basically can take those stem cells and allow them to program into the body and integrate into that type of cell. They differentiate into whatever cell the body says that it needs. So however that all works, I'm not fully understanding it, but this is the basic system that they've taught me. And I've done a lot of reading. I've been researching medicine for 8 years. And I'm aware now that it comes down to lab, the actual molecular polymeric evidence. You know, you need, and I have seen in books a lot of polymeric images, like what a ribosome looks like, molecularly from a certain standpoint. And then, like, I was looking at sarcomeres. I'm currently studying anatomy and physiology at Penn Foster. I'm not doing too bad, but it is quite a lot to learn. It's tough on the memory. It takes repetition, and that's key. Is rereading things, being interested in what you're doing, learning all of the systematic functions of the body. You know quantum physics because that's relative. That's not ultra complicated. However, it really does much matter. So yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot to it. We could go on and on and on about all the molecules and the things that they're being learned still today in 2020 here in October 2020. There's still much more to learn. I'm not sure that we can actually be immortal with the scientific process, but it may be true that we can definitely defeat death in a lot of circumstances where we might have died if we hadn't had the science. But keeping us alive without failure for a long period of time, such as being so-called immortal, that would be more so a cellular process. It's always a cellular process. So if this can become invasive and repetitive. So if anything's missing in the cellular process, it causes disease. It can even cause death. So if anything gets deformed about the system, all of a sudden you're fucked up. So that's pretty much what it is. We get sick quite often. I've been sick all my life. I've battled different things. As you can see, my teeth aren't straight. But I am an educated man. But I've battled illness a lot. I've overcome a lot of illness. And I've even found cures, even natural cures for illnesses. There's methods, there is. And I've been on a lot of medicine. I've even made videos about the medicines that I've been on. A lot of them I don't like. They're not good enough. Some of them work. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. There's too much of it. Sometimes it's not even close to accurate whatsoever. So, I mean, there's a lot to learn, but we got the theory. We just need the actual evidence. So this video is going to be called, I think I'm going to call it a touch on immortality. Thanks for watching.